Good evening. This is a presentation of Disproportionality in the Education System, a focus on discipline and misdiagnosis by Tiffany Lane. Noltmeyer and McLaughlin wrote that education should be tolerant and have respect for rights. Education should be inclusive and deliberate. Decision-making and accountability for non-discriminatory and equality for all students. If we are to realize the promise of equality, opportunity, and participation for all students that is consistent with a democratic framework, then education should be provided fairly, equitably, and inclusively. Noltmeyer and McLaughlin wrote, historically, that equality within education has been extremely difficult for minority groups. Those minority groups include African Americans, Asians, Hispanic children, First Nations children, and other groups who identify as other or would be considered as mixed race. Throughout this presentation, I will identify possible causes to misplacement of minority children within the education system, possibly labeled as learning disabled. Children are also disproportionately overrepresented as being delinquent within minority groups. I will analyze various scholarly reviews and various research methods to identify disproportionality. Disproportionality is defined as the over or underrepresentation of the undeserved racial or ethnic groups in special education as compared to other racial or ethnic groups, or all other groups combined. Background literature includes articles written by various scholarly reviews. Noltmeyer found that there is a disconnect in education and identifying special needs for children who are in minority groups. Considering the history of disproportionality, we as a people have a long way to go to be more inclusive. Skiba and others assess disproportionality as regarding discipline by using data collected from school-wide information systems known as SWIS for the last various scholarly reviews, I feel, added different views to disproportionality. For example, Skiba discussed limitations in disproportionality studies are that most schools implement the no tolerance rule, which is not necessarily appropriate for every infraction. Minor offenses are being treated with maximum penalty. Faudis wrote, completing a study of elementary school children who participated in the Adolescent Brain Cognitive Development Study, also known as ABCD, the study found that 11,000 children between the ages of 9 and 10 years of age, 53% male, 47% female, 52% white, 15% black, 20% Hispanic, and 2% Asian, 10% of other mixed race children were disciplined at a disproportionate rate. Out of 633 students received suspensions, detentions, 80 of those children were white, 263 of those children were black, 94 of those children were Hispanic, 1% of those children was Asian, 95 of those children were mixed race. Children with a single caregiver were disciplined at a higher rate than children with two caregivers. According to Faudis, disproportionality in discipline has the following long-term effects. Disciplinary actions that can impair typical childhood development lead to academic failure and a higher dropout rate. Causes are significant emotional and psychological distress to disproportionately affected children, which are black children, multiracial black children, and children from single-parent homes. Here I have a graph, for example, of one incident, which is fighting. Statistically, out of 100 children, 20% of the 100 children is white. Black children were disciplined 4.7 times more than children of white race. Hispanic children were disciplined at a rate of 30%, which makes this 10% higher than white race. Other children, or children who identify as Asian and biracial, were disciplined also at a higher rate of 45%. Cook completed a study on disproportionality within the special education system. Essentially, Cook discussed that there are over or underrepresented children from 4 countries based on 13 different studies completed in each era. According to Cook, there is an representation of minorities in special education, and there is an overrepresented number of children in advanced standing. I found this study to be appropriate to support my report due to evaluating other countries who have different education standards and methods, but who still have similar experiences and issues as America. This study in particular focuses on the lack of special education for minority and indigenous peoples. For my problem statement, I have stated the following. Disproportionality is a problem in the education system as it causes long-term labels for children in minority groups with negative impacts. Children are excessively disciplined. Children are met with hostility by authority figures at a disproportionate rate of white children. Children in minority groups develop low self-esteem, which follows them into adulthood. The purpose of my study is to identify bias to minority children. Children are being targeted by their race and either labeled as cognitively delayed or delinquent, or are often driven to delinquency or delinquent behavior by lack of stimuli to nurture a healthy learning environment. For my research questions and hypothesis, I have stated the following. What is the cause of disproportionality in education and discipline in the education system? What is the cause of behavioral issues in minority groups? What is the cause of excessive discipline in minority children? What is the cause of minority children being placed in special education at a disproportionate rate to white children? By the collection of data via questionnaire, student discipline records, student testing information, educators questionnaire, and education placement testing, I am able to answer my research question and justify my hypotheses. For the nature of my study, I will be completing this study from systematic sampling points. According to Rubin and Babby, discussed that systematic sampling point is, for example, out of 10,000 participants, my selection would be 1,000 children. The 1,000 participants are chosen from every 10th child selected at random for my study. My data collection tools would include informed consent from educators and parents, collection of data from student files, omitting their names, social security numbers, and other personal information, mail distributed and returned questionnaires for parents regarding their children, and all questions would be open-ended and closed-ended to all informed. This information was collected from Rubin and Babby's study of proper assessment tools. Limitations would include permission from school board and parents to access children's personnel files, access to school records and discipline methods, and concerns from participants that they may be seen in a negative light. The significance of my study is addressing disproportionality in my field as being important to build self-esteem in children and ensuring that they have an equal opportunity for positive education experience. Identifying the cause of disproportionality and educators admitting personal bias due to negative stigmas based on race would benefit children. There is disproportionality of children placed in special education between those of higher socioeconomic class and those of lower socioeconomic class, being labeled as learning disabled when they are simply not afforded the same opportunities as those that are more privileged. In conclusion, I will say that education is important for all races, genders, creeds, and any socioeconomic class. Often it is those who have the least advantage who persevere further. But imagine if that person who persevered through all of these difficult situations were given the same opportunities as those of the majority group. Limiting education for any child is placing the world at a disadvantage. And as social workers, it is our responsibility to be inclusive and treat everyone the same so that we are all given the same opportunities. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and thank you for just giving me time.